with some strawberry shortcake. So let's start actually by getting our sweet potatoes roasted up for our quinoa bowls. We're going to do, ooh, arm cut on that. We're going to do a little sweet potato, like an Asian miso kind of glazed sweet potato that we'll roast up in the oven. That we'll have with our quinoa bowls as well. So I've got like the world's smallest sweet potatoes here. So I'm going to give them a quick peel on the outside and then kind of slice them up into cubes, and then we'll give them a quick marinade, and then we'll pop those up in the oven so that they can start to kind of roast up for our lunch today. And then we'll make our shortcake so that they can bake up, and we'll get working on our quinoa bowls for this. Okay, take off our tops and bottoms and get these. And I'm gonna make kind of a really simple kind of glaze on these using some sesame oil, some Japanese barbecue sauce, and some miso paste, but just simple and delicious. Kind of pick up on some Asian flavors with it. We're gonna also have in our quinoa bowls, we're gonna have some sauteed onions, mushrooms, and shishito peppers. So kind of bring in those flavors as well. And then I'm going to use, for my beef today, I'm actually going to be using stew meat, which is just another great way to use it. But I'm going to sear it off essentially and keep it at a nice medium rare. But it's just a different way to use stew meat other than just putting it in a soup. There we go. Just a few more of these since they are kind of small and tedious. Although I guess if I were going to make baked sweet potatoes, these would be perfect size for like Teddy and Jack. They're so tiny. It's funny because when normally like these were in a bag, and normally when I go like to the grocery store, I'll buy them, like where you hand pick each one. And I'm always like, let me find the biggest sweet potato. And this guy's, he's a little one. Okay. Although the nice thing about smaller sweet potatoes is they are less, I want to say like dried out and fibrous. They're typically pretty tender all the way through. Okay. So we've got our sweet potatoes here. So I'm going to just get rid of our skins. We're going to do kind of a chunky chop up on them, and then we'll get them glazed up and ready to pop in our oven. And then we'll get our shortcakes made, which are a lovely kind of biscuit type, a sweetened biscuit. I'm going to do, since these are fairly small, I don't have to cut them too much to get to a good size on them. Here. So just good enough, a good size kind of cubing on them for them to roast up in the oven. There. And roughly around the same size. Although with potato or sweet potatoes, they actually cook up fairly nicely. They're not like potatoes where you kind of have to cook them and cut them up very evenly. Sweet potatoes tend to hold their shape and bake well. Okay. Those 5 sweet potatoes yielded about 1 big sweet potato worth of sweet potatoes. But a little bit of sweet potatoes can go a long way. Okay, for our little flavor profile here, I'm going to just kind of bundle them all together. We're going to give a light drizzle of some sesame oil here, just a small amount because we'll add a little bit of olive oil, which let me go grab. But that sesame oil will give this really nice kind of nutty flavor to it, which is going to be lovely. And then we'll do a drizzle of olive oil and some onion powder. Nice shaker on. This is going to give it a nice little crust on it, but it'll be a really savory one for it. A little bit of garlic salt, not too much, just a pinch. And then I'm going to use some Japanese barbecue sauce, which is going to give you a nice kind of sweet and savory flavor to it. a nice little swirl around, I want to say like a teaspoon, teaspoon and a half. And then I have some miso paste here. And let me grab a spoon out. And we're going to kind of coat these up here. I'm going to use about around a teaspoon and a half of miso paste. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour just a little drizzle of coconut aminos right over my miso paste. About, I want to say a teaspoon, maybe a little less. It allows me to break it up some. And then I'm going to really work these into my sweet potatoes and kind of coat everything up. And you're just going to make sure you get that miso paste really mixed around. You could always mix everything in, a jar on the side and then coat it, but I can also just do it in here and save the dish. There we go. We'll spread these guys out so they all have a nice little roasting, but they're going to be bursting with flavor. So they'll really add a lot of flavor to our dish, which will be wonderful with the quinoa, which will be a bit more mild. Now our hands are quite messy, so let me give them a quick rinse. And then we're going to go pop these in the oven. And while they're cooking up in the oven, let's get our shortcake going, which I'm most excited about. So I have my oven set at 425 because that's what we're going to be baking our shortcake at. I'm just going to put these down at the bottom. They don't need a lot of direct heat because they're going to be in there for a good 20 or so minutes for this until they're nice and tender and a little bit of a kind of a crisp base on it. Let's get our shortcake going. But while we're waiting on our shortcake, we're right the first step. Let's get our water boiling for our quinoa. Quinoa doesn't take very long to cook, but I'm going to make about a cup and a half of it. So we're going to use 3 cups of water. And we're going to bring that to a boil, and then we'll add in 1.5 cups of quinoa. And then I'm going to add a little bit of chicken bouillon to this so that it has a little bit more flavor to the quinoa, which just is going to make it taste a little bit nicer. If I can open it. There we go. So just about, I'm going to say, around a teaspoon, teaspoon and a half, about a teaspoon and a half there, because we're going to be using, this is 3 cups. So I kind of want about 3 cups of chicken broth for it. This is going to make it a little bit more flavorful. I'm just making it dissolve off of there. Now, once that comes to a boil, we'll add in our quinoa, and then we'll let it boil for a few minutes, put the lid on, turn the heat off, and then you just let it sit, and then you'll fluff it up after a little while. Let's get our shortcake made. Okay, let's start out. We need our flour here. We're going to use 2 cups of flour. And then we'll cut, it's kind of, you start out very similar to a biscuit. We'll add our wet mixture into our dry mixture, but we're going to cut butter into our dry mixture. So we're going to start with 2 cups of flour. And then I'm going to add 1/4 cup of sugar, which will give them just a little bit of sweetness, but they're not an overly sweet shortcake. And most of the sweetness is going to come from the macerated strawberries that we'll put on. So just around 1/4 cup. And then and we'll sprinkle a little bit over the top of the biscuit after we brush them as well with it.
Do you know what you're making for dinner yet?
Yes, I actually do know what I was making. I was talking about it, and I was like, I thought I had a plan. I do have a plan. I think I'm going to make stuffed shells and some homemade breadsticks for dinner tonight, and maybe a salad. So I think that's the plan for it. Now, don't hold me to it. It could change. We're going to do 4 teaspoons of baking powder here. 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to add in 1/2 teaspoon of salt. We'll mix this up, and then we're going to cut into this a half a cup of cold butter. So let me give this a quick little mix up. I've got my back burner. So mix that around because you want that baking powder to be mixed well into that flour. Same with the sugar and all that goodness.
You have a question for the miso paste? What does miso taste like?
It is like an umami flavor. It's got a savory kind of a saltiness to it, which I think is really lovely. Like soy sauce is made from like fermented soybeans. So it's miso paste is made from soybeans. So it's kind of that same process. It's like in that flavor of deliciousness that goes well with like Asian cuisines. I always love it. I get mine at like our grocery store. They have it in the international section. And I use it in a lot of different things. Get all my wrapper off my butter here. We're going to cut a half a cup of butter into our dry mixture here. Make sure your butter is nice and cold. That way it will cut up nicely in here. And I like to just start with smaller cubes because it just cuts a little bit easier in there. There we go. I'll give it all a nice little kind of coat up first. And then I'm going to go in with my pastry cutter here. And we're just going to cut these into pieces that are a little bit smaller than our a pea. Here we go. And it takes about, I will say, you can always use a food processor for this, but it is really, really easy to do it by hand. You can also use knife, like 2 little butter knives to cut the butter as well, or the old like school way where you just smush it between your fingers. But I have a pastry cutter and it goes pretty quick on here. And by the time you haul out your food processor, it takes way longer than it does to cut this butter in here. So we've got this, we're going to cut it in, and then we're going to mix up our wet ingredients. We'll put them together. We'll kind of press and fold these together to make the flaky layers of our shortcake biscuits. We'll cut them out, bake them up, get our strawberries going, and then we'll work on our rest of our lunch. So it's pretty yummy. Okay, and I cut again. Just all the way around. Again, no piece is really bigger than a pea because you don't want to have any big like butter voids in here. Okay, I think we should be just about good here. And then just go again. Sometimes you have little pieces that stick between your blades, so just take your little butter knife and cut them out. Okay, give a good stir through and see. Do a couple more cuts. And then we'll be ready to make our wet mixture. Okay. So for the wet part that we're going to stir in here, you're going to use 1 egg yolk and a half a cup of buttermilk. Now, if you don't have buttermilk, that's not the end of the world. What you can use is, I'm going to grab this, like a mixture of of cream and whole milk, and then you just add in a squeeze of fresh lemon juice, and it will give you kind of the texture and flavor of buttermilk, because not everybody has buttermilk. And I just want the yolk. We're going to put that right into our buttermilk here, and again, I have a half a cup of buttermilk. Grab a spoon or a fork here. I'm going to mix this up and mix that in here. This is the last of my buttermilk. Apparently, I'm flapping it everywhere. And clean up my mess just a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to essentially use our fork and just kind of toss this wet mixture into our dry mixture until it's got a nice shag that forms. And then we'll flip this out on the counter and we're going to do our press and folds. And then we will cut them out into our biscuits. But the trick here is you don't want to knead it, but again, press and fold to form those nice flaky layers. Get these kind of tossed. So it'll look like a dry shag, but once we get in there, it will come together nicely. Okay. Clear this to the side just a smidge. I'm going to pour our quinoa in real quick before I get my hands completely dirty with the press and fold so that we can there. We have 3 cups of water boiling here. So I'm going to use 1.5 cups of quinoa here. I'm just using tricolored, but you could use any one. And once you've got it to a nice boil, we'll add this in here. And then I'll add just a splash of olive oil as well. We'll let it cook on high for about 5 minutes. Then we're going to turn the heat off and put the lid on. And then you just let it sit for about 15 minutes and then you'll fluff it. Okay. Got my 1.5 cups of quinoa here. I'm going to here's my spoon. Give it a good stir. And then once it comes up to a boil, we'll let it boil again. We'll put our lid on in just a few and turn the heat off. Okay. Let's get these guys out. We're going to do our press and fold. And what we're going to do is just press it down. And then we're going to fold it over.
Do you have a question? How many people do you cook for each day?
So for our lunches, it's typically a smaller crew. But for our dinners, it's typically around 9 people. And then our lunch is really 4 adults and then kind of snacks for everyone when they get home for this. Now, strawberry shortcake is available for everyone. I don't think these will even make it to my parents' house. They'll be eaten up here. But I had strawberries that were ready to go in and that needed to be used. And so strawberry shortcake it was. Okay, so the method here is press and fold. So no kneading, just fold the dough on top of each other and press it together. That is going to give you your flaky layers. So again, press it. So any crumbles, dry crumbles that you have, just put them on top. You're pressing it together. Those are going to, again, every kind of press and fold grouping that you do creates just wonderful flaky layers in this. And then get some more up here. I'm just getting all those little loose crumbs on the side. Okay, I think we're ready to cut out our first couple. And then we'll do our kind of our Frankenstein where they kind of pop up a little, not as pretty as the first round of them. Get those right here. Let me get my hands. Well, you know what? I'm just going to grab my thing and I'll wash them because I still have to do some more press and folds. I do need this. It's been, let me grab it real quick. Give this a nice stir. And then I'm going to turn this down nice and low and put our lid on. And we're going to let it actually turn it off. You don't even turn it down low. With quinoa, you turn it off. It's different from rice. And you just let it sit. And like 15 minutes later, it will be beautiful and fluffy. Okay. I like my biscuits for my strawberry shortcake to be about, I want to say like 1.5 inches high or so. We're going to cut out them and then we'll put our scraps together to make some new ones. So you can kind of see the beautiful layers in there from our press and folds. Let me grab my baking sheet over here. Now, this is very different from the strawberry shortcake growing up, and I never realized that strawberry shortcake was not just one big, two, like I guess two big biscuits stacked on top of each other, but that's how my mom always made it. And she made them in like little 8-inch round cake pans. And then I remember having it at my like husband's, parents' or house. And I was like, oh, these are so cute. I've never seen it done this way before, with the individual biscuits. And then I realized that was the normal way. And my mom was like, oh, yeah, I just always made them this way because it was a lot easier to make one big one and then instead of a bunch of big ones for our little ones for our family. Cut this guy a little bit more. Okay, so here are going to be our 4 perfect, beautiful ones. And then this last one is what I like to call my, well, I guess will probably be 2 or 1 and a small one. Is going to be our Frankenstein. Don't need this one. What you're going to do is you're going to press and fold it back together a couple of times to get your shape back. And we'll cut them out one more time. Cut one, and then I'll have enough to make an itty bitty one, which I always call like the little kid one or the Jack one. So we're going to press and fold it. And the reason why you want to press and fold it back together is because if you just try to push those edges together, it will split out and will pop in funny directions. There we go. So we've got our little itty bitty one on the side. Let me give my hands a quick rinse now. And what we want to do here is brush the tops with either a little bit of cream or buttermilk. I'm used up all of my, I have actually enough, I think, in here. We're going to brush it with just a smidge of this over the top to give it kind of this golden brown color. We'll sprinkle a little bit of sugar. When I said I used it all up, I'm like, I've got drops. So I'm going to use a little bit of cream as well with this. But brush the top with either buttermilk, cream, or you can even use a little bit of milk to give it a nice little golden edge on it. You don't need a whole lot. Less than a tablespoon will be more than enough for these biscuits. And then we'll sprinkle a little bit of sugar on the top of them, which is going to give them this just really lovely, sweet, crispy edge on top. Because again, these are not overly sweet kind of cakes. The flavor, the sweetness that we're going to get is actually going to be from the strawberries that we're going to cut up, and then we'll put them in sugar, and that will like let them sweat out their natural juices. They're going to macerate them, and that will make them nice and sweet. Here we go. Okay, and then just a little bit of our sugar. I'm just going to grab it while it's over here instead of bringing the whole container over. And just right over on the top of each one. And then these are going to bake for about 15 minutes at 425 on here. So let's go pop these in the oven, and they'll be ready here. Beautiful. And we've got those. I'm going to give these a little touch. I think our sweet potatoes are pretty close to being done. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm gonna bring this timer. I'm gonna do 14 minutes. That way I have a minute to kind of get over here for them. We've got them baked down. You can see that barbecue sauce, or the Japanese barbecue sauce, has kind of evaporated. So we just have this wonderful kind of sweet potato base left with our miso paste on there, which will be wonderful. I'm gonna scrape them off and put them in a bowl here for this. But they'll have a nice kind of sweetened caramelized edge to it, which will be amazing. These are going to go on top of our quinoa thing. So let's get them off, and beautiful. These, I will say, are just delicious. They're like snacking sweet potatoes. There we go. One in it. Still one to eat. Very delicious. And very hot, but so yummy. Okay. Before we start on our strawberries, let's get our onions sauteing and cooking off here. And we'll get our vegetables going, and then we'll get our meat prepped up. Our meat's one of the last things that we're going to do, because once we cook it up and sear it, we'll be ready to eat our bowls here, our little quinoa bowls. But we're going to caramelize our onions, and then we've got some mushrooms, shishito peppers that we're going to do and add to that. And this is a bowl that's actually like really great. You can do it hot or cold, because with the quinoa, you can actually make like a lovely like miso dressing and then eat this like the next day as almost like a salad. And it's wonderful. For the onions, I'm going to do nice kind of skinny slices for this. And I'm going to do it, we'll switch here. We'll do it in this pan and let them start to caramelize. Add in a little bit of olive oil. And we're going to let them start to cook up. And that way they can start getting their kind of flavors through on here. Okay, let's get our strawberries while we're waiting. This is an important part. You need to make sure you don't leave this to the very end, because you need your strawberries to have a chance to sit and soak up the sugary, flavor of it. So I have these strawberries already washed, so I'm going to slide everything over here, because I said they were past their prime and they're picking, so they're ready to be eaten on here. So we're going to give these start slicing them up, and then we're going to add them for this many strawberries, which is about 2 pounds of strawberries, so essentially 2 cartons. I had like a really big container, which I washed and went through. We're going to do around between a cup, like a half a cup and a cup of sugar. You want that sugar to kind of really work with the strawberry juices to create this lovely sweet syrup, because again, strawberry shortcake biscuits aren't super sweet. And so that sugary strawberry syrup is what's going to give you that touch of sweetness, which is also going to work really well with the whipped cream. That was always one thing, my mom's strawberry shortcake biscuit. She never added any extra sugar to her strawberry shortcake. And I always felt like her sugared strawberries could use a lot more strawberries in it, or sugar in it. It was very, very, I would say, it was a very, very European version of it, a very Swedish version of strawberry shortcake. And I definitely have improved on it over the years for it. And now she says that this is her favorite variation of it. And she goes, I don't have to make strawberry shortcake ever again. You can always make it now. But I think the biggest thing is really making sure that you use enough sugar in the strawberries, because you're not putting it in your shortcake. Our shortcake only has a 1/4 cup of sugar in it. So as you can see, for a good amount of that leaves about a little over a tablespoon per shortcake. So not very much. Again here. And then when I'm making it, if I make extras of it, I like to make a new strawberry mix every single day. Some people are like, oh, make the strawberries like the day before. I like them to be fresh, the same thing, but at least sitting for a good, at least 10 minutes, so that they can make that syrup, but not where they get mushy. We'll get these guys in here. But this is perfect when you've got a lot of strawberries or when they're on sale. You know, this is that time of the year when you're going to start, it's getting close to strawberry season and they're going to start being on wonderful sales. Like I love it when they're like $1.25 a pound and I'm like, ooh, strawberries, everything galore. I know I always say, I'm like, oh, we need to go to a strawberry farm and pick strawberries because that would be so good. But the problem is if I were to take my little ones, I'd have to be like, we're going to have to pay for strawberries before we go in there because I know that they're going to eat a bunch before we have a chance to weigh them. So they're just going to have to, I'm like, double whatever because we probably will eat that much in there because if I know them, they'll be like, one in the basket, one in the mouth. It's always like when Evie was little and she used to help me harvest. And she was my only one who truly loved like tomatoes. And she would just eat them straight off the vines outside. And I'm like, they don't even make it inside. Okay. We've got our strawberries here. Now we're going to give them a generous coating of sugar on there. Give my hands a quick rinse. So I'm going to say for this one, I'm going to probably do about 3/4. So we're going to mix it on here and kind of coat it up. You want it to, again, make a nice sweet syrup that will be able to drizzle over your shortcake. And now you just got to let them sit and let them sweat out their natural juices. And this will be ready once that sugar has all dissolved. There you go. Let's slide this guy over here since we're done with the sugar part. And get our rest of our little lunch going here. Give these a nice little toss for it. We're going to prep up let's get our veggies prepped up, then we can get our meat because that will go in like kind of the last little quick thing. These are shishito peppers. If you've never worked with a shishito pepper, they're kind of fun in the sense that 1 and 10 are spicy. So you never know which shishito pepper is going to be spicy or mild. And they truly are really mild unless you get that one spicy one. And I always feel like I have this one sister who's like, I always say I can't handle spicy food, but she really can handle spicy food. And every time we'll have them, she's like, I always get the spicy one. And I'm just like, I just think you can't even handle that because they're really not that spicy on here. For this. Now, I will say these are a little bit, a lot of times when you will get them in a restaurant, they won't even slice them in half. They'll just sear them off whole because they are a kind of a messier pepper to de-seed. So I'm going to slice them all in half and then I'll just rub my thumb through them to kind of pull out those seeds as best I can for this. Let's get this. And but they are delicious and it's just, they have a unique flavor that plays really well with Asian cuisine because they have that just a little bit of that spiciness, but it's not like a super burn on there. So for this, just to kind of pull them out, I'm just going to pull my thumb kind of through it like this, and it gets out most of those seeds, which will just give you a slightly better texture. Although you don't, that's like an optional. A lot of times in restaurants, they'll actually just leave them whole and almost blister them, which is kind of sauteing them on high heat. But I like to get a little bit of the seed out. There we go. And we'll kind of get these. And pull them through. And then they'll be ready to go in and saute them off here in just a second. But once you just get in, this is the one, like it's easier just to get in with your finger and do it versus trying to, do it gently with a knife. I just find that technique with a thumb and kind of pull it out just works so much easier. And that's what I said. These are pretty seedy for peppers. Okay. Get our onions just about, and then we're going to pop our onions out. We'll toast up. This is something I actually saute each one of these ingredients separately because this is a bowl I like to assemble at the end to make it. While we're waiting, let's get our mushrooms. That way we can have those ready to kind of saute up here in just a second. And then we'll prep up our meat. And then we just have to make our whipped cream for our strawberry shortcake because those will be ready soon and then it'll be time to eat. For our meat today, we're going to we have again a stew meat, which is a great option to use that you don't have to use it just in stews. I think people think, I can only use it in a stew. I actually find it's really lovely and an affordable meat that you can saute up nicely. The one thing you have to be cautious about is not overcooking it because overcooking it will make it tough. But if you sear it off and keep it at a nice medium rare in the little bits, it is quite lovely and tender. We'll get our mushrooms going here in just a second because who doesn't love delicious mushrooms? And they'll kind of build these in our bowl as well. I think I'm going to grab out another little pan here to start sauteing because I've got a good amount of stuff going. I always say bowls always kind of use a bunch of little things here. That one's running low. Let me grab another oil up here. We'll get our shishito peppers cooking. That way they can start heating up. And then I'm going to season our meat and we'll get our meat cooking for it as well. So we're going to pop these in there and we'll let them saute up until they've got a nice kind of lovely, kind of a blistering sear on them. So for our meat, this is from my butcher box. It's about around a pound of beef stew meat. And stew meat typically is just a wide variety of different cuts of meat. So we're going to take it out and season it up, and then we're going to sear it off on our pan with, we'll make a kind of a quick little marinade on it. But, so far I have really enjoyed everything that we've gotten out of our butcher box. So I'm going to take out our meat pieces because most of the time when you get, stew meat, they're really big pieces. So I'm going to trim any of these into a smaller piece that I need to. And typically with your meat, actually I can use these kitchen shears to do it because I already can. It's just your random ends of different beef cuts. Okay. I have a few more. I'll just get these real quick and then we'll head over there and grab our shortcakes out of the oven. Okay. I think these are pretty good sizes there. Let's grab our little alligators. We'll check on it. Looking gorgeous. Look at these beautiful shortcakes. Let's turn this off. Beautiful. Look at that one. See, these are the first ones that come out beautifully. And then you have your Frankenstein ones. Let me grab a trivet to put these on. So you see brushing them over the tops with that little bit of milk cream gives them those nice golden brown edges, which just makes them absolutely gorgeous. And that little kiss of, brown with a little sugar on top, so a little sweetness to them. You're going to want to let them sit for a few minutes so it's not something that you want to take out right away and then instantly serve up. They need to cool, let them steam out a little bit, let that butter sit to get those nice flaky layers.
You have a question. Is shortcake like a scone?
Yes, it honestly is very much just like a scone. Not quite as sweet. I want to say, at least my version of it is not quite as sweet as a scone. It's kind of in between a scone and a biscuit. So you do the same process of kind of like cutting the butter into it. My scone recipes typically use about a half a cup of sugar. This recipe, I also say this is not as big of it, but uses this used a fourth of a cup. I'm going to add just a little bit of butter to my caramelized onions here. We're going to add a little bit of garlic salt.
And what kind of meat are you using?
So this is stew meat, beef stew meat, and we're going to just season it up lightly, and then we'll sear it off, try to cook it at a nice medium rare. So we'll have these lovely little tender bits of beef to go in our little quinoa bowl. And it's just a great way, an economical way to use a cheaper cut of beef, or like actually variety of beef, because beef stew meat typically is different cuts of beef in a way that's not stew. I always say, like, I feel like people like, oh, when they get it, they can think they can only do like a stew or a chili or something that's cooked. I'm like, it's actually wonderful, seared off on a nice high heat. You just can't overcook it. Okay, we've got our onions here, nice caramelization. I'm gonna grab a little bowl to put these guys in, because again, we're gonna build our little quinoa bowls. It always reminds me, if you've ever eaten at like a True Food, they make all these great grain bowls, which I love. And these are kind of designed similar to a great grain bowl. We're gonna get this out, and then we're gonna get our mushrooms cooking, and then we'll season up our beef, and we'll get that seared off, make our whipped cream, and it will be time for lunch. Because our quinoa is pretty much, it's cooked. It just needs its fluffing at the end, but it's just gonna sit there until we're ready. Quinoa is such an easy thing to cook because you just really require such a small amount of boiling, and then it's just a resting time. I'm gonna flip my shishito peppers here. Again, we're doing a nice kind of a hot sear on them to kind of blister them. For my mushrooms, I'm gonna add a little bit of olive oil in. We'll add a little bit of butter and garlic salt at the end, but we'll start with olive oil on here. I'll get these sauteed off. Perfect. We're done with this. So, got 2 parts of my bowl down. Give this a quick stir, and then we're going to season up our meat, and we'll get ready to sear it off. Okay. Just giving it a little stir to kind of coat the mushrooms up, because mushrooms are kind of like sponges, and they'll kind of soak up that olive oil on there. Okay, for our meat here, I'm going to use a little bit of Japanese barbecue sauce. So a nice little swirl around. I try not to make it too wet because I don't want it to, I want it to have a nice dry sear off on it, which is why I'm also going to use onion powder, because that will suck some of the moisture out, but also give it a nice crust and a really savory flavor on it. So we're going to do a good coating on here. We're going to use a little bit of sesame oil to give a nice kind of nutty flavor to it. I want to do around a teaspoon. Some garlic salt. And then I'm going to use a little bit of miso, very similar to what we did on our sweet potatoes. Add that in here, and then I'm going to go in with my hands, because that's just going to be the easiest way to kind of break it up and kind of coat everything. And just work it through. Nice. Wonderful. I'm going to spread it out, and then we're going to heat up our oil. I'm not going to put my meat in until my pan is nice and hot, because you want to sear this off nice and hot.
Can you go over what you just added to the meat?
Yes, so we did a little bit of Japanese barbecue sauce, onion powder, garlic salt, sesame oil, and some miso paste to kind of give it a nice kind of little Asian flair to our dish here. And then I'm going to heat up some oil in here that we're going to sear our meat off in our pan with. We want it to be nice and hot before we actually drop our meat in. Let's see how our pepper's beautiful. We've got our nice little sear. We're blistering. This is what I'm talking about. This is the blister that you want on it. That's going to bring out that flavor. And you want it to be high, and you got to like not touch it when it's cooking. So they're just about done. I cook it a little bit longer, but that is going to just heat it up and bring out the intensity of the flavor in there, while also giving you this nice crispiness to it. So you're essentially, it's blistering the outside of your. So I'm going to spread them out and let them get a little bit more of that direct heat, and then they should be done in about a minute or two, and then we can pull them to the side. While we're waiting for this guy to heat up, let's whip together our whipped cream for this. Let me grab a nice bowl. When you're making whipped cream, I'm going to use my hand mixer. Stand mixers are also great with this. Make sure you have a high edge to it. Otherwise, you are going to get it everywhere. I'm going to just kind of eyeball it here for it. My whipped cream is always kind of an eyeball. I'm going to use around, a little splash of vanilla to have just a little sweet flavor to it, not too much. I don't want it too strong. And then I'm going to add just a pinch of sugar, a little bit of sugar to give it a bit of sweetness. But again, not too much, like a tablespoon. So vanilla, cream, a little bit of sugar to sweeten it up, and then we'll whip it. So it's a slightly sweetened whipped cream. You could also use like pre-made whipped cream. A lot of times I'll use that when I don't have enough cream on hand. Let's get this in here. But before I whip this, let me get a bowl for my peppers. Beautiful. So we've got our beautiful blistered shishito peppers. Add them in here. We'll add that. So that will be our next one. I'm going to turn off my back burner. We'll get my mushrooms here. Now the mushrooms, we're going to cook these a lot longer than these other vegetables because I want them to get a nice, good saute on them. We will add garlic salt at the very end, but we want them to sweat out their natural liquid first. Okay. It's almost here. Let's get a little bit of this whipped cream whipped up, and then we'll add our meat here in just a second. So we've got, again, high things, a little bit of vanilla and a little bit of sugar in our heavy whipping cream, and we'll whip it up. I like to hold my bowl at an angle, again, just to prevent it from going everywhere, but a high edge bowl works better than a low one. Look at this. And just be careful not to over whip your whipped cream so that you don't turn it into a butter. Looks like we got it pretty whipped up pretty good. And our meat looks like it's nice and hot, so I'm going to drop that in here. We'll sear that off, and then we'll be about ready to assemble our bowls here. So I've got it searing off on about a 6.5, 7. We're going to put each piece of meat on here, let it touch its own. Don't kind of just drop it all in at one time. You want to touch the pan on its own so that it can sear off nicely. If you can't fit it all in on one round, then do it off in two different rounds so that you don't, you want it to get a good sear. And if you overcrowd your pan, you're going to bring the temperature of your pan down and you won't get a good sear on it. It will cause it to sweat out its liquid and it won't be as delicious and nice. So Take the time if you need to do it in multiple batches. This is just a pound of meat, so I should be able to get a pound of meat in this 12-inch frying pan. But if you have more than that, you'll have to do 2 batches. And then we're going to fluff our quinoa once I get these last little pieces in. And you'll know when you're ready to sear these over and flip them to the other side is when you start to see a brownish ring kind of form up around the edges of the meat. And then I'll just start to go in there and toss them. Now that we have this, we've got our quinoa here. And now the trick is you do not stir your quinoa. You go in with a fork and you're going to fluff it like this. And that's how it gets nice and light and fluffy. We cook this with chicken bouillon and water, so it has a nice bit of flavor to it. But again, our veggies, and we're going to put a little bit of Japanese barbecue sauce, is going to add so much flavor to this meal. Well, let's see if I want to add any more whip to it. I think we're actually pretty good. Do 30 more seconds on here just to get it on there. Perfect. Not even 30 more seconds, like 10. You want it to be whipped well enough to hold its form, but not to where it clots, and we're good. We've got a nice, good whipped cream here that has a nice sweetness to it from that vanilla and a little bit of sugar. Okay, our mushrooms here, we're getting right at the end. Here, this is what I'm talking about. This is that beautiful saute on your mushroom that brings out so much of that flavor. Now we can add in a little bit of salt, which will allow it to sweat out the rest, but we wanted to wait until we got to that point first. Do a little bit of garlic salt in here, and then I'm going to stir it up, and then we will flip, sending these guys everywhere. We will flip our meat over here because you can see we're starting to get our form up around it. Beautiful. You see how we have this beautiful golden like sear marks on it? The second side is going to cook much faster than the first side. So by the time I have all of these flipped over, this pan of meat will be ready. Beautiful. Put those right here, these thicker ones right in the middle. And I aim to have a nice pink center in mind because I like my meat as a medium rare. So this second cooking on this side is very, very quick. We'll go through. By the time I get a bowl to put these in, they should be nice and ready. Just give them a stir around. I'm going to turn it off. And with the stew meat, it's very important that you don't overcook them because overcooking them will make them tough because you have some random cuts of meat in here. But if you cook it at a medium rare, it will be so tender and delicious.
Do you recommend salting meat before or after cooking?
So it really depends what you're making. I used a Japanese barbecue sauce in here, so that had, and garlic salt, so it had some salting flavor for it. If you are needing to like cut down on sodium, you can always hold it towards after. But I typically always salt it a little bit beforehand because if you're going to use those meat drippings in anything that you make, that flavor will go down into it. The salt will help some of that juices come out as well. Okay, let me get my mushrooms. And then we're going to be ready to assemble our bowls as well as our shortcakes. Here we go. Looking good. It's so crazy how a small amount of mushroom, this is a whole like a half a pound of mushrooms, but when you saute them up and you get all of their liquid out and you get them to where they're the crispy fried mushrooms, you have a lot less left. Okay, look at that deliciousness. Okay, guys, let me slide these guys over here. And let's get ready to build out our lunch here. Now it's the fun kind of an assembly line. We're going to use this one because I'm going to be making 2 different things. We'll get our quinoa over here in just a second. And then you could also, if you don't love quinoa, you could always do it with rice is also a great sub-in for this. Beautiful shortcake biscuits over here. And then let me grab my whipped cream and my macerated strawberries. Look at this. We've got quite the feast here. Okay. So give these a nice little stir, and then let's get ready to serve up. I'm going to get a bowl for our quinoa bowls, and then we'll do a little plate for the strawberry shortcake. And I'm going to use the tongs. And let me get a scoop for my quinoa here. Okay, let's start with our quinoa bowls. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to get this ready because we're going to drizzle this a little over the end. For lunch today, we have our tri-quinoa bowl. So we're going to put a nice base layer of our quinoa on the bottom. We cook this in chicken bouillon so it has great flavor. And now we're going to build our bowl around it. We have our sautéed caramelized onions where we add a little bit of garlic, salt, and butter at the end. Our miso and Japanese oven roasted sweet potatoes. That have just a pop of wonderful flavor, a little bit of onion powder, and just amazing, bursting with flavor. These are our blistered shishito peppers that are popping on there. That skin is blistered up, so it's going to have that real strong pop of flavor right where it's crispy and delicious. Our crispy sauteed mushrooms. We're seasoned with a little bit of garlic, salt, and that flavor here. And then, of course, we have our miso and Japanese barbecue sauce flavored beef stew meat that we pan seared. And you can see it has this just lovely saute marks on it. And then we are going to drizzle this with a little bit of our Japanese barbecue sauce for just the perfect little, Asian bowl. And then for dessert, we'll grab this guy. This is our strawberry shortcake. Beautiful layers here. We're going to break them right in half. You're going to put your base down here. And the way I always like to do it is we're going to start with our strawberries, and you're going to spoon on your strawberry juices here, just like that, right on top of it. And then you're going to add a nice dollop of whipped cream. That's our homemade whipped cream. We'll put our biscuit top right on top here. And then I add whipped cream again, a small dollop, and then we finish off with a few more strawberries right on top for the most delicious and amazing strawberry shortcake. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. We've got our Asian kind of quinoa bowls with our strawberry shortcake, and you always watch and cook along with us again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my hex-clad pans, my hand mixer, knives, cutting boards, all the different things that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.